After several seconds in which I drifted off course, caused by the urge to bypass the unpleasant silence, I reconsidered that I was not yet at the end of my speech. I still had to mention somehow how that would affect my future, my abitur, and my relationship to them. After all, that was the most difficult part of my soliloquy, coming from the indirect generalities to the direct specifics. But in the end, I reminded myself of the certainty to otherwise have to catch up with that elsewhere. So clarification once and for all was needed for the sake of everyone, while also aligning with my primary motive, bringing me closer to Chloe. But before I continued talking, I attracted their attention onto me once more, because both Mom and Dad were scanning through the vicinity, kind of avoiding me. But Mom, Dad, that's not all. When you have received such a diagnosis, it is in some cases not the end yet. I mean, you still have some time left to enjoy life, as strange as that may sound. Sometimes years, and sometimes weeks. And in this aspect, I have to be honest with you. When she had years left, I wouldn't have told you most likely. But under momentary circumstances, I have to throw that overboard, because what I was acquainted with changes everything, as for me, as for you. I was already shocked when she made the announcement as regards her diagnosis for the first time, but that was nothing compared to Monday this week, when she specified that. According to her output namely, she was going to be released soon. And you may ask, why? Well, because they couldn't help her anymore. Because they never could help her, as that thing didn't recede at all. Meanwhile, the two of them were attentively looking at me, mirroring back the importance of the by me mentioned topic regarding the here and now as well as the future. Although they stayed silent, I could almost hear their question echoing, how long? That reminded me of myself, as I wondered about the same matter. Only the gap as to how they would react was present, so I hastily jumped to the final point of my speech. In fact, when you refer to the opinion of the medics, she has about 11 weeks left, and she will be released with the purpose to seize what's left. And before you wonder, yes, I'm profoundly involved in that process, as we saw so many parallels between us to build upon, and therefore we decided to enjoy the time left together. I don't know what love means for you, but for me there's no definition describing it better than a relationship between us. When I finished speaking, followed a conversion I never would have evaluated possible, as they were looking at each other. Minutes ago, their reactions could not have diverged more, but now all of a sudden, they were a mirror to each other. They even showed mutual hand-holding, what occurred at the most once a month. But apart from that, they still remained quiet, which affected me severely. As a consequence, the entire relief I had gained due to the fact I laid my cards on the table vanished and was replaced with suspense. Not excitement in the positive sense, but rather terrorizing tension. Anyway, after persisting for a couple of seconds longer, something changed as my dad stood up and left the room. That proved me above all that change is not always pleasant, at least in its initial stages. Though I asked my mom what that was supposed to mean more than once, she didn't feel prompted to say anything. Only a slight nodding occurred, as if she wanted to express that she had heard it, but nothing more. I raised myself and looked one last time at my mom, who sat there like a statue, and then walked into my room. While walking through the corridor though, I had a faint glimpse into my dad's office, but soon regretted following my conscience and inquiring about him, as he almost appeared like an empty hollow of the person I knew. He namely sat on his chair and gazed at the monitor of his computer, while not doing any input. He clearly was in thoughts, as I noticed when he seemed captivated by the blank page of Microsoft Excel. I knew the layout of the program from computer science, so I grasped rapidly what he was doing. But before I rattled into another uncomfortable situation that was avoidable, unlike before, I quickly continued walking into my room, where I got occupied with the same activity as my parents. 3 people doing the same in 3 different rooms, so to say. Mom and Dad were dealing with processing that, as it was eminently much within a little time. I, however, doubted that it was the right choice to have told them. After all, I only wanted to let them know what was going on, not disturb them to their core. Moreover, I was responsible for taking their appetite away, as we didn't catch up with dinner for the time we were thinking, which included the whole evening basically. I had eaten something not too long ago, but they certainly hadn't, so they likely went to bed with an empty stomach later on. At some point, they just disappeared without saying anything, which bestowed me with the feeling of regret. Once more, I didn't want to hurt them by any means, and yet I seemed to have achieved exactly that. In the end, my only chance for rectification consisted of the hope they would be more accessible on the next day, which entailed likely going through a long, tough one first, but however. Such an explanation with whomever I talked about it needed time to be processed. I already mentioned the paralysis after a shock or accident, or as it happened in my case, a shock induced by something utterly unexpected. I mean, yeah, my dad had a nice idea, but even he couldn't have reckoned with the truth, according to which his son had a relationship with a moribund girl. But be that as it may, concluding with my thoughts, I assessed it was best to give them as well as myself some time to adjust to the new situation. And accordingly, I was far away from a happy mood when I laid my head onto the pillow and covered my body with the blanket. I was so entrenched in skepticism that I completely forgot my self-declared ritual, namely to wish Chloe a good night via text message. Since it was quite early, I had good chances to establish a little written conversation with her. Besides, the thought of her really infused me with the certainty what I was fighting for, and why I accepted the possibility in the first place to dismay my parents in such a high degree. Namely because the circumstance required it, and above all, there is nothing bad at speaking the truth. Only the lies spread beforehand cause damage. Short term it may hurt, but long term it will be for the highest good of everyone involved. So I took my phone with the intention to write her at least one last message. Due to all those thoughts, I was very exhausted, so I decided to relocate a real conversation onto another day. To my surprise though, when I activated the screen of my phone, she already anticipated and sent me a text message. Even though it has to be mentioned that this was actually the minor surprise. The major one was referring to what she wrote me, as it truly chased any fatigue away. By now I think you have spoken with your parents, and in this aspect I want to let you know that I've got your back. If you need support, then you can call me at any time. Sleep well, and keep your head up. Sincerely, Chloe. Frankly, I was amazed by two things. Firstly, that she mysteriously knew exactly when I had consulted my parents, and secondly, the support she furthermore provided. Yeah, the current day bore a high probability for that conversation, but I also could have done that either directly when I returned home from the hospital, or the day after the one I effectively did it. Although it was spectacular every time it happened, I gradually was getting used to it, to the girl in my life who knew me better, could calculate me better than anyone else. But at the same time she was thinking ahead, as I saw by the help she provided me. All in all, she confronted me with the phenomenon which I witnessed as for myself, not for the first time. Just changing my mood from one polarity to the other by looking right through my whole entity. It almost appeared like magic. But I'm not talking about the illusions modern magicians use to adorn their shows with, as it is only based on pretending. They do as if they could fly, as if they could escape from death traps, and so on. But the magic my life has been imbued with was by far not an illusion. Alone my body's exterior indicated that it was more real than many other things. Not even starting with my interior, as it fortified everything with the same result. All in all, I could claim to feel kind of uplifted again, through one message consisting of 2 lines. Some people suffer from such a dark, concerned mindset for days, weeks, and so on, and even a psychologist is no guaranteed remedy. Chloe was certainly not acquainted with the topic of psychology to that degree that she enlisted my subconscious mind and helped me without noticing. As simple as the solution may sound, the only thing that magically works in 10 out of 10 cases is love. It is a remedy to physical and psychological issues alike. 4 trivial letters which change worlds, be it the one of a single human or the one of humanity as a collective. Although it is kind of unfathomable for many, love is nothing theoretical made describable by using scientific or mathematical formulas. When you try it nevertheless, it will most likely evade you, but when you start living it, then it will reveal the fabric desires are made from. Science is curse and blessing equally. Many things are made understandable by it through experiments and studies, which lead to hypotheses and then theories. But the shadow side of it includes the attempt to pack matters into words, for which no words exist. However, according to my own theory of magical love, I had thought about it enough, but had not yet applied it practically. So I entered the chat room and just wrote back to her what was present in my mind all the time after I read her texts. Never before I was able to describe something with so little words so precisely. Afterwards, I pressed onto send and laid my phone aside and managed to drift into sleep without contemplating the shadows still surrounding me. Even with closed eyes, I could see the illumination which showed me distinctly that there was not one thing to be afraid of. On the next morning, I only felt a little bit sick due to the impending confrontation with my mother, who was up already and working something in the kitchen. I probably had a stressful day of school before me and a lot to work on later when I returned home, but all that, be it ever so obtrusive, was nothing compared to the confrontation with my mother when I stood up to ready myself for school. Although she seemed to show some comprehension at first, or pretended at least that she did, I had no clue what was really going on in her interior or what I should expect. After all, anything was possible.